Underrated, we the underdogs, underestimated, yeah.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Totem Podcast. Like always, we got Eric here with us today.
How's it going? If you guys want us to keep bringing on guests on this show, just make sure to subscribe to our channel and make sure to hit the bell for notifications. That way you can be notified every time we bring a new guest on and have another episode up. And we're on YouTube and Spotify, all as the Totem Podcast.
Cool. So yeah, we've been bringing you guys guests in different fields, but this guest I think is a very important one because I think this is where it all starts. We can't be able to build stuff and do different stuff if we don't have this right. So today, help us and welcome Dr. Sam McDonald. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you for having a little drive to come out and visit us.
Absolutely. I'm excited. I love doing podcast work like this and love just getting the message out. So, hey, any chance I can get, I'm jumping at it. So thank you for having me on, both of you guys.
Yeah, so for people who don't know, really who you are, what you do, can you just give a brief explanation?
Absolutely, yeah. So I am the clinical director of a neurologically based chiropractic office with my wife. The office name is Wild and Precious Optimal Living. So again, we are brain-focused chiropractic. So the whole soul and the whole experience and whole focus in our office is optimal neurological function and expression. So everything we do is all about the brain, it's all about the nervous system, and it's all about helping people to function at their best.
Cool. So kind of, if you can take it back a little bit, tell me a little bit how you got started, or because I knew you were somewhere else before you came to Colorado. Right? So it's what brought you here, and then how did you get started pretty much doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up going to a chiropractor. Old sports injury way back in the day when I was in grade school. I was playing football on that old school AstroTurf, rolled my ankle and sprained it and damaged it to the point so bad where I almost couldn't walk, and was dragging on for weeks and weeks. I'm literally dragging my foot around the house. And my mom just finally got tired of seeing that. A friend of hers recommended seeing this chiropractor. I had no clue what it was. I was in 6th grade at the time. She takes me. This guy adjusts my ankle, and this loud pop goes off, almost like a shotgun sound. And I just remember swinging my legs off the table. I stand up, and for the first time in weeks, I'm standing without pain. I had no clue what this guy just did. I'm like, what did you do to me? This is incredible. And I could walk and I could play sports again, and everything. My life was returned and restored. And from that moment, I was kind of hooked. I didn't really, innately, and I didn't really know what it was about, but innately I knew this was something that I needed in my life. And continued to go throughout the rest of my football career in high school, concussions. I had multiple concussions, multiple other kinds of injuries, those kind of things, just nature of the sport. And it just became part of my life. Fast forward after, undergrad, through a brief career in the corporate world, I come back to chiropractic. I went to a school in Dallas, Texas called Parker. That's where I met my wife. We moved back out here to Colorado because she's born and raised here. She's from Aurora. And from that point, we did a couple of associateships kind of along the way. And we started our practice now we've been in this space now since November of, this will be 3 years. So we've been doing this since then.
Okay, so your wife's a doctor also, right?
She's a chiropractor as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that your guys' main focus, more because you said neurological? Mm-hmm. Is it chiropractic or neurological?
Both.
What? Both?
Yeah, so both. So traditional chiropractic, people think about, they hear the term chiropractic, they think two things. They think back pain, they think neck pain, right? Someone's going to snap your neck like Bruce Lee or crack your back, and that's usually what we hear, right? It's hey, I want to go see a chiropractor. I threw my back out. Where should I go? I go to the chiropractor. That's the traditional old school sense. There's nothing wrong with it. Traditional chiropractic is mainly always focused on the spine and on the range of motion in the joints of the spine. But in our sense, neurologically focused, we're looking at the brain. And we're looking at the questions, okay, why do certain health problems and maladies happen? And what can we do to then correct these issues and areas that are happening in the brain? So, for example, let's just take something like vertigo, in a sense. So vertigo, you're looking at issues in the balance centers of the brain, and we're looking at what areas or deficits are happening maybe from one side or the other. Because classical vertigo, what we see is you got 3 balance centers on each side of the brain. You got 3 on the right, 3 on the left. And what we'll see with people is usually what happens is there's one side that's running really, really high and one side that's running really, really low. and they have to keep each other in balance. Because if you turn your head to the right, what happens is your brain sends this electrical signal up there from a mechanical input and says, hey, I just turn my head to the right, or I just turn my head to the left. And what happens if you turn your head to the right, this side has to activate, but this side has to dampen and turn it off to keep it in balance. Otherwise, you're going to feel like you're spinning. So with vertigo, what we'll see with people is, hey, one side's running too high, one side's running too low. We get that back in check and balance, and all of a sudden the dizziness that people experience, the wobbliness, the uneasiness starts to go away.
So how does kind of like chiropractic work go with like the brain stuff? How does that, I mean, for the people that don't know like that process, like how?
Yep, absolutely. So every joint in your body sends information up to your brain. It's a big fancy word we use. It's called proprioception. That's your doctor word for the day. All right. So if you're on Jeopardy, ask what's the sixth sense of the body. It's proprioception. Give me a call. So proprioception is the sixth sense of the body, and every joint in your body is sending information up into your brain. So what happens is when joints stop moving in their full ranges of motion, they get locked or restricted. This is called a subluxation. In chiropractic, we call it a subluxation or chiropractic subluxation, or sometimes a vertebral subluxation. All those words are kind of the same. So every joint in your body sends information up to your brain. What happens is when a joint stops moving appropriately, now it starts to send bad information up to the brain. This is called nociception. Otherwise, people think about it as pain. This is where people think about, oh, my back hurts, I threw my back out or whatever. Okay, we have a joint that's not moving the way it's supposed to. It's sending bad information up to the brain. Over time, this bad information starts to put the brain out of balance because you have a right brain, you have a left brain. It all gets information up there into it. And when one side starts to get out of balance, now you start to get what's called dysautonomia. Dysautonomia is where the nervous system is now out of balance. So you have two different states of how you function. You have your fight or flight system, you have your relaxation system, parasympathetic and sympathetic. So these are both states of how we operate every single day. You should be more in relaxation mode, parasympathetic mode, about 80% of the time, and more in relaxation mode, more in stress mode about 20% of the time. Okay, so 80-20. And what happens is when you start to get this bombardment of bad information up to the brain, you have now this dysautonomia cascade where the brain goes into a stress mode because it's in defense mode.
So is that kind of what creates kind of stress?
That's what stress is. So stress is the result of what's left over after an event. Make sense?
Yeah,
so
yeah, I'm following.
Right? So
I just like to, I'm just thinking I'm processing it. Yeah, but
so you encounter a stressor in your life, whatever it may be. It can be a physical stressor. It can be something like a car accident. It can be something as subtle as how you hold your body every day. You have physical stress. You have chemical stress, which is everything that you put into your body. And you have emotional stress, which is probably the most damaging and the biggest one. Right? So emotional stress, we think of like our family life, our relationships, what we're thinking about, our job, all that kind of stuff. And that's really, really important because of how our brain works and develops. And if I don't get back to this, remind me, we'll get back to that part. So you have all this information coming into the brain that causes this dysautonomia piece, which is going to throw the body out of balance. And over time, if you let this build and build and build, imagine a body being stressed every single day, right? You're stuck in this stress mode where your brain is perceiving, you're feeling like you're being chased by a tiger every single day, right? You think you're going to be healthy or you're going to be sick?
Yeah, you're probably going to be sick. It's going to be like a bomb, it's just going to get so right. Big before it just blows or something. Exactly.
It's going to blow it. And depending on the person where the weak link is, that's where the symptoms are going to show up. So for somebody, if they have GI issues, if they're in a chronic stress state, if they have a weak gastrointestinal system, and when I say GI, I'm talking about stomach, in large intestine, small intestine, basically everything you need to absorb and break down food. If that's the weak link, that's where you're going to show up. If you have issues with neck and movement in the neck, you're going to get headaches. If you have problems with being able to process chemicals out of your body and you start to develop pain everywhere, you're going to get fibromyalgia. If you have problems in terms of brain imbalance on one side or the other, you're going to have anxiety, depression, and these sort of things. And then over time, what happens too is now you get what's called dyskinesis, which is an abnormal energy output where the body starts to then use way too much energy or not enough. And that's where you have symptoms of things like mania, chronic fatigue, those kind of things. So all of it comes back down to stress.
Yeah.
How your body is processing things, again, what's left over afterward. Because if you handle a situation appropriately in terms of how you adapt, that's the big key word. If you take away nothing else from today, two words are adaptability and resilience. So if you don't adapt appropriately, then your body is going to break down. If you don't have the resilience to handle the stressors in life, your body's going to break down.
With that kind of going to, appreciate you breaking all that down.
Yep.
With all that kind of like you're saying, it's the connection between your brain and your joints and stuff. So me personally, I do every morning. I get up, like I'm half asleep, I get some water and I do a stretch. It'll be like 10, 15 minutes. I don't know if that's actually good for me or not. I just feel better, it helps me as I'm waking up and kind of it's like a car, you always turn it on, let it warm up before you start going 75 miles an hour. So I just kind of do a stretch. I don't know if it's beneficial or not, but it just kind of, like you're saying, it kind of just relaxes me as I pretty much, I guess, turn my body on, like start stretching. Is that good, you think?
Absolutely. So the old adage, motion is life, right? So the more you're moving your body, the healthier you're going to be. And more importantly, the brain grows through movement. So you have to move yourself if you want to have a healthy brain. You have to move your body. And flexibility is something sorely lacking in our Western culture. So yeah, the fact that you're maintaining good fluidity and plasticity and all that, yeah, absolutely.
And I try to do that more because, I have kids and you just see them and they're so flexible. They can get their head to their knee and all this. I'm like, and I'm not even close to that. So it's like, I guess the way is just to get back to it, because I think we lose it because we're all kids. We had that flexibility and we lost it. So that's why I try to do it. But then with that too, I kind of wanted your take, like you're talking about the brain and body connection. What's your take, like say a meditation stuff? Like, do you think that helps you kind of connect to your stuff, or is that just...
Or can it like help like relieve some of the stress too? Like, because like one of the symptoms is like stress is like losing hair, falling out hair. Is that like one of the like more earlier onset kind of effects of stress, or is it more down the line once you have like a longer period of like high stress situations?
In terms of losing hair?
Yeah, like do you think that that's like, is it like more early on in the phase of it, or is it?
I think it can be. I think it can be depending on the nutritional level of the human being and where they're at too, because hair is going to be a byproduct of your nutritional intake and how much you're absorbing as well. Vitamins, minerals, all those kind of things. What was the first question?
It was can like meditation help with all that?
Yes, it can for some people. I'm a big fan of meditation. We have people do certain kinds of not necessarily meditation per se in the office, but mindfulness types of practices and those things. It can be helpful for some people, but for some it's not. So think about the anxious person, right? And I struggled a little bit with this last night. Just those ruminating thoughts, right? You kind of get stuck in a case of stinking thinking, right? And you get caught a little bit of a negative cycle.
Always happens right before you go to sleep.
Exactly, right? So that's... But with some people, if their brain's kind of more pushed into that level at the moment, then meditation may not be the thing for them to do, so to speak. Like sit down, and take the pose and do that. That's probably not the best thing for them to do at the moment, because what's going to happen is they're just going to get stuck in that ruminating cycle of thought patterns, and you're just going to keep reliving it, and you're going to keep reliving it, and you just keep going through that over and over and over again. And that's a problem because, now we're back to this point here, our brains are very different from every other species on the planet because of this front part right above your eyebrows here. It's called your frontal lobes. It's your experience simulator. Right? So you can experience things in the future without ever really having to do it. Right? So I always think about this example. Imagine getting a delicious ice cream that tastes like liver and onions.
Delicious, huh?
Delicious. You guys think about that for a second. You guys both made the same face. Like, oh, that sounds awful. Why? Have you guys ever had liver and onion ice cream?
Never.
No.
Never. But you can imagine
the
experience of what that would taste like. And that's what your frontal lobes allow you to do, is that you can imagine things in the future and predict and be able to think that through of what could happen in the future. And other animals cannot do this.
So is that kind of connected with the consciousness too? Like it's
Absolutely.
the experience too that a lot of other animals don't have, is the consciousness.
Correct. Yeah. So that's kind of the gift and the curse of the human brain, is that we can experience things and we can predict things. So you can do amazing things with it, right? That's why we've been able to build houses and equipment to do podcasts and all these amazing things that our species has achieved. But at the same time, it can also be a negative, because then we can get stuck in these awful thought processes and these things that really drag us down. Like, what happens if this awful thing happens? Well, then this awful thing happens, and this awful thing happens, and you just keep going down this path, and now you're stuck in this anxiety and depression loop.
No, yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
that's good. It just gets me thinking about the stuff, how it goes. I wanted to get your take on define, I mean, I personally sometimes I get kind of confused with it. Dementia and Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
What's going on in the brain with each different one, or what's the difference?
So a lot of research is still being done on both, but in terms of just basic definition, so dementia is kind of the umbrella term of cognitive decline, and then Alzheimer's is a specific disease manifestation subset of that. Now, Alzheimer's is like the most prevalent form of dementia, and it's characterized by beta amyloid plaques in the brain. And don't ask me to go too much into detail on those, but in a nutshell, basically think of all these protein chains that should be in nice, like smooth, orderly fashions. They get tangled into like a big knot. And that's what you'll see a lot in these brains of people with Alzheimer's, and they have these things here. We don't really know yet why this happens, but it does for people that experience that. And a big expression of Alzheimer's is the cognitive decline piece.
And on some of that, is it like some of it could it be reversible, or you kind of start going down that path and it just gets worse as it goes?
Depends how far we've gone down. Now with Alzheimer's, there's new technologies and things that's what they're trying to do to be able to reverse it. I don't think anyone's cracked the code yet, so to speak. Some stem cell therapy and those kind of things, I think, is what they're looking at to be able to do that. Again, no huge results that I've seen yet have come from it. In terms of with dementia, depends how far down the road you've gone. From what I've seen in personal practice and with other mentor practices and things out there, to a certain extent, yeah, it can be reversed. And there's 7 stages in dementia. Pretty much once you get to the stage 5, you've gone too far, and there's really nothing that can be done. 4 and below that, there's possibility of it being reversed, assuming that the person's willing to do the work to be able to do it.
Okay, so you mentioned stem cells. I mean, you put stem cells, like say people got bad knees, they give them a shot at their knees. How's it for brain? Do they give them a shot in the brain, or how's it?
I think it's more of an IV drip, or I'm not sure exactly how they pierce the blood-brain barrier there. I think it's more through what's called exosomes and a different kind of stem cell technology. I don't know too much about it, but from what I understand, I mean, they use it a lot for, especially down in, I think it's Panama, the Reardon Clinic is probably the world's leading authority on this stuff, where they're using it a lot for neurodevelopmental issues, autism, fatal drownings, those kind of things. They're using it for that, to be able to regrow brain tissue. It's amazing stuff. I mean, our temporal lobes, and we have all natural stem cells in our body. I mean, our temporal lobes right here, the part of the brain used to listen, that part of the brain has a ton of stem cell colonies there to be used to regrow stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it might be getting a little bit in the weeds, but what do you think about that you're just able to do it in Panama? Like,
I think it's amazing. Yeah. If they're having breakthrough cases there and seeing literally people be restored and get their lives back, I think it's incredible. Yeah. It's a shame that more stuff like that isn't.
That's limited.
Taken advantage in the U.S., but that's mainly because of the way our healthcare system's set up, and unfortunately the way that we're so stuck in the pharmaceutical model.
So going back to kind of like because you said if it was like too far along, like for Alzheimer's or dementia, it's kind of lost cause, I guess.
Yeah.
Is there anything like people could do to like maybe like slow it down or anything so it's not like keeps going down like that quickly or anything?
Yeah, big time. So there's several things you can do. So dementia and cognitive decline is not a short-term disease process. We're talking about something that's been building for years and possibly decades. So it's the end result of a process, and it's the end result of your lifestyle choices and the way that you've been living. So things that you can do if you want to slow down and or potentially reverse your dementia and cognitive decline, one is clean up your diet. So inflammation is one of the biggest detriments to destroying the brain. So if you're a person who chronically eats fast food, cut that out. Right? You need to get depending on the diet that's going to be preferred for you. If you're a vegetarian, obviously go that route. If you're more of a omnivore, go that route. I think probably the most balanced thing that most people can approach is paleo. When people ask about, hey, what's the best diet? Like plants and animals. Just keep it really simple.
Just keep it more natural, not so much processed stuff, I guess. That's
as little processed. If it comes in a box or a bag, you probably don't want to eat it.
You can tell right when you go to the grocery stores. If you shop in the middle aisles, that's where all the processed stuff. If you go on the border, I mean, that's where not 100% natural, but that's where all the fruits, vegetables, meats. That's where everything's.
Yeah.
Or in my grocery store, it's all just on the left-hand side.
There you go.
I'll just go to the left, and there's another part you can hang out in. Everything else is processed.
What's kind of crazy, I mean, kind of going off subject, is that area is usually way smaller compared to the whole store.
Well, yeah, because I think they they say the price margins there are so much lower than on everything else.
Yeah, that's a whole different topic. But
Yeah. So anyway, to be able to reverse that, one, make sure you clean up your diet. So cutting out sugars, processed foods, fake oils, all that kind of stuff. So like fake fats and those kind of things. So basically, you need to be eating coconut, olive, avocado, beef tallow, animal fats, lard, that kind of stuff. Yeah, things you guys, as we talked about the other day, you were talking about being able to kill animals on your farm, the other stuff from there. That kind of stuff is what you need to be eating, right? Natural foods coming from the earth. So that's step one. Step two, you got to be able to move your body, like you talked about. Movement. Movement drives the brain. Movement grows the brain. The brain grows through movement. I can't say that enough. Super important. So you got to be able to move every single day. And aerobically is great because you're going to oxygenate the body. Anaerobically is great because you're going to develop more mitochondrial function and everything else. So doing both, strength training to increase bone density and also be able to drive more brain growth there too, all of it. But you have to move every single day. Those two things right there will help you prevent it more than anything else.
And what about because a lot of people probably listening right now or they listen to you talk about it, they're like, I don't have dementia because I'm 28 and I don't have dementia. Is there a certain type, it can be because I've been to your office, you guys have a lot of cool equipment that you can be able to maybe detect something at a, earlier stage, or not really till you're there?
Usually it's going to be like memory tests and subjective questionnaires and those kind of things. There's not necessarily a blood test or something like that to detect it, but you can do cognitive assessment profiles that can look at and see and test your memory and see hey, well, how well can you remember short-term, things like that? What's your working memory like? How well can you remember long-term things? And you can use those as pre and post baselines. We'll do stuff like that with people to be able to check and see what's your progress at and really how well are you progressing the right way, or if somebody's just doing a test, come in a year later and see has it changed. And sometimes you'll see it accelerates and those kind of things too. So yeah, you can do kind of those types of tests to be able to track it and monitor it. But in terms of levels, yeah, like somebody who's 20 says, I don't have dementia and Alzheimer's. And it's like, all right, well, what we do in the office with people is we'll check smell, because smell is one of the leading indicators for somebody who has dementia and Alzheimer's. The reason for that is smell fires into the temporal lobes of the brain. Those are your primary memory centers of the brain, where the hippocampus is. And that's where your brain's going to store information. So if we check smell, and I'll test this on certain people, and somebody who comes in who's 27 years old, couldn't smell on the right side. Peppermint, essential oil, super strong. I open up the cap and I can smell it, from holding it an arm's length away. I can smell it from there. Hold up to the nose, they can't tell me what it is. Okay, well, now we know we have an issue with what's happening in that side of the brain, because that smell fires into there.
You were telling me about some process some studies that were going on, right? That you were saying with laser, something like that, for people that had from COVID that didn't get their smell back or taste or something like that, was it?
I don't know about certain studies. I mean, we use laser therapy in the office to restore taste and smell with post-COVID symptoms. So yeah, we've seen really good success with that. Mm-hmm.
And is that just with laser, you say?
Mm-hmm. Just with laser therapy, yeah. So we actually I got a video on the YouTube page. So for those out there, Wild Precious Optimal Living on YouTube, we've got a testimonial video up there. I just walking through the process of working with this lady who had no smell, and her taste, everything tasted like metal. So anything she ate tasted metallic, which is really wild. But yeah, did that with her. And I don't really understand the whole mechanism of what's happening with it. As far as I can understand, it just seems like those neural pools there are under functioning. And laser, basically what we're doing is as we're working with people, we're stimulating these neural pathways, and then lasering is going to stabilize that. It's going to provide energy to the neuronal pools, and it's going to allow them to then function again.
So they're asleep, and pretty much what you're doing is kind of waking them up a little bit and just kind of put...
As far as I can understand, yeah.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Just like in English terms for us, because
Yep.
It's more technical.
Did you guys kind of discover that, or is it from someone else that discovered it and then you guys just started practicing it?
Well, the concepts were taught to us by the doctors that that founded the laser company. So everything we do with laser in the office is all about this process called co-activation. So we're activating a certain area. So again, anything in our office, when we're working with people, we're looking at areas of the brain that are not functioning well. And we're going to activate those certain areas in the brain, and then we're going to put laser on top of it to stabilize that, because laser does a lot of different things. Two most important things: it provides energy into the area, so it allows those neurons to stabilize and heal. And two, it also increases blood flow and what's called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is needed for the brain to change. So when your brain changes, and the brain has this plasticity, it's called neuroplasticity. That's your brain's ability to learn and change and grow. So think about, you guys have young kids now, so over there, are they riding bikes yet?
Yeah, I don't have any kids.
No? Okay.
Not yet. Not yet.
Right.
Not yet. Yeah, I have a daughter. Yeah, she rides bikes. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a period in her life where she's trying to learn how to ride a bike and she can't quite get it right.
Uh-huh.
And then there's just that one moment where, like, bam, she gets it.
Out of nowhere. Yeah.
And that's the brain finally getting that neuron pathway to fire. And now her brain has changed forever because she's now, unless, God forbid, traumatic brain injury, she's going to know how to ride a bike for the rest of her life, which is amazing because our brain learn how to grow and change and do that. And that's called neuroplasticity. That's our ability to learn and do things, just like driving a car. At one point, you didn't know how to drive a car, then you were really terrible at it, and then you got it because your brain learns.
So how important is it for we say it in kids because that's where we see it the fastest, but for just an adult to keep challenging themselves, to keep learning something, because like you said, it's the brain function to keep it. It's like a muscle. You never work it out, it's never going to go.
Exactly.
So like the brain to keep doing it, because we say just kids, but it's like when you're a kid, like I have a baby right now, if he can't walk, you're not just going to tell him, you've been trying to walk too long, you're never going to walk. So it's like keep training your brain. Like how essential do you think that is to I guess that people should be doing, like even at an adult age?
Yeah, I mean, throwing it back to our previous conversation, if we're talking about warding off dementia and Alzheimer's, then it's huge. Yeah, constantly be using your brain and learning it every day. That old saying, if you don't use it, you lose it, is 100% true. Every area in the brain is prime real estate. So if you don't use something, your brain's going to take it over for something else. So if you want to get really good at looking at your phone and scrolling Instagram and all that kind of thing all day, then by all means do it. If you want to get really good at developing yourself and learning things, then you got to put in the effort and the work and time to do that. And you're going to get better at it. You're going to get better and better and better the more you do it.
Yeah.
So the best, like, I guess for just from here you talk like the best preventative measures for Alzheimer's, dementia, or even other diseases that happen later on, is to start when you're younger.
Yep.
And just taking care of your body.
Absolutely.
Taking care of what goes in your body, like what you're eating, and then also just moving your body, and then just being aware of like what's actually going on and how it's going to affect you down the line.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's really hard, right? Because there's no really reward in that. There's no reversal of something, or there's just, as our culture, we just don't put a lot of emphasis and a lot of value in prevention outside of maybe going to the dentist. So yeah, it's just hard for a lot of people to do. There's like, I'll just whatever, it's not going to happen to me, or I'll just deal with it when it happens. Well, it's like, well, at that point, it's too late. So yeah. If you take care of yourself earlier on, you're going to have much better chances for either overcoming this stuff or preventing it in the entire first place.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like the best way for people to learn is through pain, because people don't want to, and even then, like you said, the dentist, they usually start going because they're either the teeth are a little ugly or a little crooked or something starts hurting.
Exactly.
And it's like, why do we wait for something to break before we try to, fix it? We can do something so it never breaks, but I mean.
So how would you recommend for people to go visit you like earlier on just to see how they're doing, or is it kind of just like wait till something hurts?
Just to get like a test sooner or something like that, or something.
I mean, if they wanted to, absolutely. But I mean, unfortunately, like I said, just in our culture, in our society, it just doesn't work that way. It's usually until something has manifested that they need to get rid of. And it'd be great if people could use us as to get something that they want but they don't have, versus to get rid of something that they have and they don't want. But that's just really how our society works, and that's just, there's no in how the brain too. There's no really hard motivation. There's no drive there in the positive direction. So typically, like I said, what we see in our office, the majority of stuff that we see, especially now, is mental health issues. So anxiety, depression, those kind of things. Really, really good with that. Chronic pain, a lot of the stuff that we see as well. So headaches, those kind of things, and balance issues. So I got a couple clients right now really working with vertigo and balance problems. And it's amazing to see, because vertigo, especially for one, is just, if you've never experienced it, I mean, it's debilitating, it's awful, and you can't see it from the outside looking in, but I mean, a person's world literally feels like it's just spinning as they're sitting there or walking. And so that one too is really rewarding, because usually it changes fairly quickly.
Yeah, that's the thing with a lot of with the brain stuff. Say you hurt like you said at the beginning, you hurt your ankle, you can kind of tell because you start getting a limp.
Yep.
You hurt something, your arm hurts, you can tell because you got to fold it up or whatever. With the brain, you really can't tell until it starts stuff later. And with that too, I mean, since we're in Colorado, I kind of want to get your take. What's, everyone's like the medical marijuana, they got all this, the marijuana, and now we got mushrooms, all this. Are those things actually really helping, or is it just kind of like a pharmaceutical push?
I think it depends how you use it. One, from what I've seen with the marijuana stuff, it actually, so again, back to the cognitive decline piece, it actually accelerates it, depending how much you're using it and how long you're using it. So I'm not a big fan of it in terms of using it much for anything, because it wrecks your brain over time, and it creates this dependency piece. And people argue, oh, marijuana's not addictive. I'm like, all right, well, then stop using it for 2 weeks and see if you can. And a lot of them that are chronic users don't. Pun intended there. So what we see in the brain with marijuana usage is you have different brainwave states. Let me back up the train here. So as we're looking at the brain and how it functions, think of like an old school radio dial. So you've got high energy frequency brainwaves and you've got low frequency brainwaves. So if we dial it down all the way to the right, you have what's called beta. Beta is your active, awake, and alert stress brain. If you dial it down, now we have alpha. Alpha is this awake but relaxed flow state. Dial it down again. Now we're into theta. This is light sleep, and this is deep relaxation. This is also in your sleep cycles where you process and catalog and organize information, and this is where you store short-term to long-term memories. Dial it down further. Now we're in delta. This is deep sleep, your deep regenerative, restorative sleep. This is where your body physiologically heals. So with marijuana, what we will see is in this alpha bandwidth, we'll see it slow down alpha to these low alpha states, and this is where you start to get cognitive inefficiencies and problems with cataloging and organizing information, because marijuana also interrupts REM sleep cycles. So people that smoke a lot of marijuana are now going to be more prone to that dementia, Alzheimer's type problem, because they're not getting the REM sleep that they need, they're not cataloging and organizing information, and it's slowing their brain down. So as you get older, your brain naturally is going to slow down, like everything else, but the more you use that, the more you're going to artificially and slow your brain down even faster. So I'm not a big fan of it. Like once I learned all this stuff, I was like, dude, I'm never touching that again. Like as good as maybe it makes you feel and all that kind of fun stuff, in the moment or a couple times, it's okay. You're not going to hurt yourself. But I'm talking about the usage.
The daily usage or
daily
something.
Usage every single day. People are like, oh, if I don't smoke, I can't sleep. Like, okay, you got other problems and you need to address those versus just using this, again, as a mask for it. And again, better living through chemistry really still hasn't been shown to work. So you can use a pharmaceutical, you can use marijuana. It's still the same action. You're just using a different tool.
Yeah, because I think it's just you're stimulating the brain, so it's just like it's altering your state of mind.
Because a lot of people use it for like pain, for pain management and stuff like that. So would like I don't know, like CBD oil be a better alternative?
I think so, because I haven't seen it affect the brain in the same ways, because it doesn't have the psychoactive THC in there. So I don't think it affects the brain in the same way. But CBD, the big important thing with that is just making sure that it's clean, because the majority of the CBD oils and stuff out there extract them through a butane process. So using butane to get the oil from the plant. So unfortunately, most of the CBD oils that you're going to be consuming, if they're not really high quality and clean, you're also getting butane into your body too, which is not good.
Yeah, doesn't sound too good.
No.
So what about like because we're talking about like altering the state of mind, like we're going, what effect does alcohol have on it? Because like marijuana is legal now, alcohol, people are like it's illegal, it's good, like it should be good, but it's altering your state of mind. We're talking about like being able to control your state of mind, not just alter it essentially.
Right. Yeah, well, alcohol is going to be a depressant, right? So it's going to depress the nervous system, and it's going to shut down more of the frontal lobe activity. That's why the people drink start to do really silly things, because they're shutting down these executive centers, and that what used to sound like a bad idea, now it doesn't really sound like a bad idea anymore, because you don't have that wisdom center working as well.
Let me get another beer or two, and then we'll talk.
Exactly.
Then we'll see how good.
Yeah, then we'll see how it goes. Hell, man, I'm not going to jump off that roof yet, but hey, give me another beer, and then we'll talk about it, right?
Yeah.
So that's what happens with that. It also is going to affect motor centers. So your cerebellum, which is responsible for motor learning and movement, it's really going to affect those. That's why police officers, when they pull you over, they make you do like the hand to nose and touch your nose and stuff like that. It's a cerebellar test. That's why they look at your balance and everything too. That's why it's really dangerous to drive. Obviously, one, because you don't have the judgment there to say, oh, it's not. I can handle going 20 over the speed limit. Well, you also have impairment in your motor function too. So that's why it's really dangerous for that. But in terms of affecting your states and those kind of things, again, it's going to. And over time, it's going to have much more detrimental effects. I think that's been well discussed. But again, everything in moderation, everything in balance. It's okay to have a couple of drinks I think, on the weekend or something like that, because especially if you're doing it with friends or family, you're partaking in something that's way more healthy than anything else. You're fellowshipping with your with other people. And that's super important because we're social creatures. So if you're out having a couple drinks with your friends or with your family or your whoever, and you're out doing that and you're connecting with other people, I think that's way, way more powerful than all the supposed negative health effects that come from it.
Yeah, the key thing that they said is in moderation. I don't think that people do it in moderation, honestly.
Yeah.
And I'm asking you this because when I used to be younger, I mean, you have a couple drinks and you're up at early the next day, like nothing happened. And like now, what I've noticed, I'm working a lot. We're busy, I'm working out and stuff. If I have like a couple drinks will slow me down.
Yep.
And me personally, I don't want to slow down. I just want to keep going fast, so it slows me down. So that's why I don't really drink as much anymore.
Sure.
Because it slows me down too much.
Yeah, understandable.
So it's just like interesting once you actually see the stuff kind of behind all the stuff. Like they're like, oh, it's illegal, it should be good, but not really, I think.
So, I was just gonna say, so when you look at alcohol and like marijuana, they're like everything in moderation. It's better. But then, for like long-term usage, is there one that's better than the other, or are they both pretty bad? Because like, for one, like alcohol's more socially accepted, more widely accepted. They got commercials on TV all the time.
Sure.
So like more people tend to do that starting at a like younger age and keep going. But then marijuana, maybe just because it has that stigma of like it being a drug, people won't really like use it as much as alcohol. So what's your take on that?
Oh, in long term, so are we saying somebody's using it in moderation for long periods of time?
Yeah, in moderation, and then also like a chronic user.
So I guess the hard part with smoking stuff is that in itself, right? When you're smoking things, you are ingesting harmful carcinogen into your body. So you're smoking something, it's being burned, and now it's going to damage lung tissue. So if you are going to consume marijuana, I always recommend people vape, don't smoke, because you're not going to have the issues with a lot of the carcinogens and destroying lung tissue and that kind of stuff. And that's the problem with people that smoke cigarettes and cigars and that kind of thing, is they have, the emphysema and the breakdown of the alveoli in the lungs and the O2, CO2 exchanges. So if you vape, you're not going to have the same kind of damage with that. So if you're going to do it long-term, short-term, that's always my recommendation to people, is vape it, don't smoke it. In terms of what's going to have a more healthy or detrimental effect, I really just think it's how you use it. So again, if you're a person who wants to light up once a week, I think that's totally okay. I think if you're a person who wants to have a drink, on the weekend or something, I think it's okay. Now just make sure you're balancing that out with other health development activities along the way. So if you're a smoker, make sure you're getting cardiovascular exercise to be able to offset some of that. Again, you're vaping it, not smoking it. But I think it's really going to depend on the usage of it and how it's really going to damage you, and what other activities and what other choices are you making to develop your health, not break it down.
So everything in moderation.
Huge.
With, still taking care of yourself and stuff, especially for like long-term stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we're part of this world, right? So everything in this world naturally is going to break down, right? That's just the nature of the laws of this world. You create a building, and if you don't take care of it, it's naturally going to fall in and break in on itself, right? Gravity's going to destroy it, the elements and everything else. There's these universal forces out there that are naturally trying to break everything down. It's not that they're mean, so to speak. They're not, out there trying to get you. It's just that's the natural part of life. You have destruction, you have creation. Same thing with our body. Our body is naturally in a state of this constant development and breakdown. And the choices and stuff that you're making are naturally going to push yourself in one way or another. You're either going to slow that process down by making more healthy decisions, or you're going to accelerate it by making poor decisions.
Isn't like vaping worse than just smoking it? Because naturally, because
people, the argument people say is like it's like, I guess, electrical stuff. So I don't know.
Or they got like different flavors of it too. So it's like,
I'm sorry, I'm not talking about vaping in terms of the jewels and candies and stuff like that. I'm talking about vaping and just having in terms of the temperature of how you're activating it. That's what I mean. So correct. Thank you for that correction.
Okay.
No, not talking about that kind of stuff, so to speak, with all the liquid candies and watermelon flavor and those kind of things.
Yeah.
That's even worse than smoking. No, I'm talking about the temperature in which that you're actually activating the stuff. So I think smoking is somewhere around like, with fire, it's like 1,200 degrees or something, versus vaping is at like 400. So you're activating the ingredients of the plant, but you're not turning it into ash.
Okay.
Yep. So that's what I mean by it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because someone's gonna listen to this and just take that little clip out.
yeah.
Oh, vaping's good.
Vaping's cool.
It's all good.
So before you smoke a joint, go do your research.
Exactly.
And so now here in Colorado also they got the, I mean, I don't know how much more trends we're going to begin of stuff. They got the mushrooms.
Yep.
I guess they call them, it's microdosing, so it's okay now. But like, what effect do psychedelics, mushrooms, actually have on somebody?
Yeah,
What's going on in the brain when that's actually?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing because I'm still researching some of that too of what's going on. As far as I can understand, again, you're activating and you're shutting off some of the stress centers in the brain, is from what it sounds like. So the lower brain centers, your limbic system, and those kind of things that are responsible for our fight or flight responses. So you're kind of shutting those off, but there's still a lot of research being done on like what the heck is actually happening, because it seems like you're activating more of the frontal lobe parts of the brain. And that's where you're able to detach from some of these situations. That's why people that do these psychedelic drugs are able to get that perspective, so to speak. And that's why it seems to be really effective for like PTSD. And they're able to get some perspective from the situation and kind of just have a break from it for a second. So instead of these intrusive thoughts being there all the time, they have a brief period where they can take a breath from it, put it on pause, sort of process it, so to speak, and then deal with it. Now, in terms of microdosing, I'm not a big fan of it, only from what I've seen, because it the way that it's used is no different than taking an antidepressant in my mind. You know, I've heard people talk about, as long as I take my microdosing every day, my depression stays away.
But you have to take them every day.
But you take it every day. I'm like, what's the difference between that and an antidepressant then? Outside of maybe it's a little easier on your liver. I mean, that's it. So I don't understand that argument and that thought process for it. Now, the discussion going into psychedelics and those kind of things and how can it be used for it, I'm really interested and fascinated in where it's going to go. So curious what it can do for people. Again, you hear positive and negative stories all across the board for it. So I don't think, again, it's for everybody. And anytime somebody says that something can help cure or fix anything for everyone, they're lying to you. Run the other way, right? Because nothing's going to work for everybody.
Yeah, that's how I think that's how a lot of people usually get started on something. Mm-hmm. I have a friend, hey, like,
sure.
I know this, my friend's cousin did this and it worked out amazing for him. Sure. Next thing you know, you're on a trip and you think you're going to fucking die.
Exactly.
So it's like, but.
Or I heard Joe Rogan talk about it and it's cool. Just because Joe Rogan talks about it.
It just depends who you're listening to. It depends where the information's coming from.
Exactly.
But I think that's what's kind of, I think it can be, stuff like that can be kind of dangerous just because people say, like, it's legal, so it's okay. It's safe. That's what I think that goes on through people's head. Because they don't want to sit, like you said, they don't want to sit around and do the research.
Exactly.
What's actually happening. Because I think it puts, like you said, it's not for everybody, and I think it puts them in a different state of mind. And I think the important thing that you said is, like, it's not for everybody because you're going to have to deal with stuff that's gone in the past, and some people probably aren't ready to deal with stuff in the past.
Probably not, no. And one of the big things we'll see in the brain, like, so we do a lot of brain mapping and brain scans in the office, and one of the big things that we'll see with people, especially with severe emotional trauma, in our brain scans are trauma markers. So we're looking at real specific brain patterns that are there. And if it's present, then we know, okay, we ask the question, hey, if you had some kind of severe emotional trauma in your past? The answer is almost always yes. Something has been there. Their brain has perceived some kind of trauma that's still holding on to. And when that is present and it's there, it's also going to affect the resiliency and the stress tolerance centers of the brain, which is going to make them more prone to, again, those breakdown pieces and that lack of adaptability. And specifically what we're looking at in the brain is this, what's called an alpha response. So when your eyes are open, we're looking at that alpha brain wave, that, remember, awake, focus, and flow kind of state. We're looking at what happens with that from eyes open to eyes closed back to eyes open. And what should happen, what we see with people, is that alpha should go up when the eyes are closed and then come back down when the eyes are open. And when that's not happening, it means the brain is basically trying to keep a lid on this event that's happened in the past because it says, look, I don't want to deal with it. I want to handle and process this.
When you have your eyes closed, it wants to like handle it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't. It's called a blunted alpha response, and so we'll see that in people, and then it just shows like, hey, their brain's trying to keep a lid on something that's there. And
so does it happen kind of like when we're sleeping, I guess?
correct. Yeah. So we all have these natural, innate, psycho analytical mechanisms in our body. Like we all can handle and deal with stress and trauma. We all have the capacity and capability to do that, unless again it's beyond our point of adaptability. Right? So think about, a Navy SEAL has way more adaptability in situations than I do. They're going to go into a situation where guys are shooting and fighting and stuff like that, and they're probably, they can walk away from that and be okay. Not all of them will, but they have a greater potential to do that than I would, for sure. I don't have training to go into a war zone and be able to take people out, but they do. And so that training and that resiliency piece is increased in them. So depending on the human being and on the person, the more stress resilience somebody has, the more adaptability that they have, the more they can tolerate, right?
So I guess would it be better just to keep, I guess, like in a controlled environment, like stress your body so you can kind of be getting used to it?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, you want to be able to push, and again, you want to train your body. You want to be able to push and be able to increase your tolerance and your health to do these sort of things. And there's lots of different ways you can do that. I mean, like I said, we use what's called brain driving in the office to retrain some of these dysfunctional patterns. And what will happen with people is we'll start to increase this alpha response. And what's naturally going to happen with people is they're going to start to process that emotional trauma in their brain. 99% of people will do it in their sleep. And what typically happens is they'll start having really vivid, colorful dreams, and they'll start to, potentially re-experience some of that trauma that happened. But then it no longer negatively affects them. So what that means is now their brain starts to have this feeling and sense of ease because they're no longer activating those stress defense mechanisms. And they can finally have like a moment of quiet and peace.
Because I read a book a while back ago. It was about the brain, but they're talking about, like especially with kids, there's a certain time, like you're saying, like your REM sleep, the sleep cycles, that there's a certain time, when your subconscious, like if you have music, it's getting the music, the noises around it. So it was talking about like talking positive stuff to like say your kids in that stage of them. So that way when they wake up, their subconscious absorbed it, like saying like, hey, I can do this, I can do great stuff. Like they actually start believing it. Is that actually? I'm just thinking because you're talking about like sleep. When you're sleeping is when you're absorbing, I guess, stuff like that.
Not really absorbing it. I think there's a lot of programs and stuff out there that have been sold like the baby Einstein stuff, right? Like play Einstein or play Mozart while your kid is sleeping and they'll be a genius. And research really hasn't shown that works. I mean, when you're sleeping, you're not necessarily absorbing information from the outside. You're processing stuff internally. And so that you're talking about your REM sleep states, and that's that theta brainwave state where you're processing information. And that's part of where this emotional stuff is processed too. And again, if you're smoking or stuff like that, if you're using marijuana, you're not doing part of that. So you're banking up all of that REM, and you're not processing stuff throughout the day. So it's really important. So again, we do a lot of that in our sleep, and that's why sleep's really, really important. It's one of the things we talk about most in the office is how to have good sleep quality and what happens in some of these certain stages.
What about because you said when you have your eyes closed, usually a lot of that stuff happens more. What about people that do like hypnosis or hypnotic states?
What's interesting is they'll see, and some people may have experienced this, especially if they've been through, just say, a really tough situation. They try and sit down and do some kind of hypnosis or meditation or like quieting, and it actually makes them more anxious. And because what's happening is they're trying to stimulate their brain is starting to go into this stimulation of processing the stuff, and it creates friction, and it creates this agitation, and it creates this unease, and it's turning on these stress systems. So it's actually one of the worst things you can do for them is like, oh, hey, like lay down and let's do a meditation on this, because it actually can make it worse if it's not guided and done appropriately.
Could people actually kind of, I mean, I don't know if that's kind of in like your realm, but like control people through hypnosis state?
They could, I think so. I've never done it, so I'm not sure.
Because I watched a movie. Remember that movie we watched, Eric? Hypnosis, or it's not hypnosis.
Oh yeah, it's no, I think it is hypnosis on.
Is it?
I think it was on Netflix.
I think it was on Netflix. So as a guy, every time he would say like certain words, she would like do stuff and she wouldn't remember what happened. Mm-hmm. But I'm just going back because I'm actually reading a book, remember I was telling you, the Chaos book. Uh-huh. And that's kind of how that whole thing is. Like, he would just kind of control him. I mean, that's a kind of another rabbit hole, but he would just kind of control him too. So it's like, is that possible, you think, for people to actually do, or is it just...
I think mind control is possible, sure. Like we joked about, the old CIA program, MK Ultra. I think it's possible. Is it possible for everybody? I have no idea. But I certainly think, there's some sense to that. And I mean, think about mind control and programming. That's all commercials are, right?
Yeah.
Repetition, as a teacher of mine always joked about, repetition penetrates even the dullest of minds. So you just have these commercials on repeat and showing you again and again, hey, go drink a Pepsi. Go drink a Pepsi. Go drink a Pepsi.
They got 0 calories now. So
zero calories. It's sugar-free now. And they just keep, plugging away at these messages. And over time, you go to the grocery store and you're standing there and you're like, man, I really want a Pepsi. So, yeah, I mean, there's some sense of it. I think that's out there and that's true in terms of, can you hold up the spinning spiral and like hypnotize somebody? I don't know if it's quite there at this moment.
It's pretty much there now. They just got the Pepsi can spinning around, or the Coke can, or whatever they want. Because I don't know. I mean, with like the pharmaceutical drugs we were talking about, there's only 2 countries in the world that you can actually advertise.
Yep.
And it's the U.S. and New Zealand. So it's pretty crazy, like you're saying.
And guess what country has the highest usage of pharmaceuticals in the world?
The U.S.
The U.S.
I think I just heard, I don't remember the stat, I'm not going to say it, but it was ridiculously high compared to everybody else. Mm-hmm. It's ridiculously high.
Yeah, it's something, I think it was something the tune of like, we have 5% of the world's population, but we consume like 65% of the world's drugs.
That's crazy. Yeah, something like that. The stat was, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's huge. And like people, you can take it in all kinds of different directions. I mean, you think about the... people always in this country will talk about the Mexican drug problem, right? It's the cartels and stuff that are pushing stuff across the border, and you hear about like the fentanyl that's coming across now, and how sad all that is. But on the other side of the border, they're looking north and saying it's the American drug problem. I mean, you guys are the ones that are consuming all this stuff. If there wasn't all this huge consumption of it, guess what? There wouldn't be a market.
There was a market for it. It wouldn't exist.
Yeah. Exactly.
So what do you think with like all them like like the U.S. like advertising pharmaceutical drugs, and other countries aren't advertising it, but then so the people tend to not look for the easy way out, I guess, for when they got like a disease or something. They tend to just actually fix the problem at its roots.
I think it's a huge question that you're asking, because you're diving into cultures and you're diving into actions and everything like that. I mean, in Europe, I think this is a great idea. They have holiday, right? You take like a month off, and it's totally acceptable for you to just take a month off of work and just go enjoy your life. That's a European culture. In America, we don't have that kind of stuff. It's a very go, go, go. It's a very driven society. We run at a very different pace than the rest of the world. And there's ramifications for that, right? I was just listening to a podcast coming in here. There's a cost for convenience. So we have a very convenient society. We have a very driven society, and there's a cost to all that. There's benefits of it too. I mean, we have the most abundant, prosperous nation on the planet. So all of our work has paid off, so to speak, because we have all this prosperity everywhere. But at the same time, there's a cost to it as well. So in terms of, I don't think it's okay that there's direct-to-consumer advertising for this stuff. Go ask your doctor to take this drug to help with this problem that also has these 20 side effects from it. I don't think that's okay. I don't think people should be making those decisions and telling the doctor, this is the drug that I want, because they're going to go to that doctor and I want this drug. Oh, no, I don't think you need that drug. Well, then they'll just go to another doctor.
Some doctors, some doctors will just give it to you.
Yeah, some will, and some won't. There's good ones out there too. I'm not going to go and bash all of them and say that.
No, for sure.
There's good ones out there that will say no, and they're going to practice the art of doctoring. But I just had a friend on Facebook post something yesterday that was like, it was like her sister's a doctor, and here's her schedule in her clinic today. And it was like at 3:00 she has a new patient. At 3:15 she has 2 new patients and an urgent care patient. At 3:30 she has 2 new patients and a well baby check. And it's like, how is a doctor supposed to keep up with all that, see people, educate, and get all this information and everything that they need to make the correct decision?
It's like us right now. I mean, we've been going on for a bit now, and it's like, I still don't know. I know the stuff about the brain, and we've been here for a while. So it's like, how do you expect to go into an appointment and know everything in 5 minutes?
Right. And understand that that everything is a process, right? Everything is a process. So healing is a process, disease is a process. So if you're sick and you want to get well, it's going to be a process to do that. If you're well and you're going to get sick, it's going to take a process to do that. Outside of certain events, physical trauma and those kind of things, those are different. But most of it's a process. It's going to take time to break down. It's going to take time to build up. That's it.
Yes. So what's, I guess, after like the whole thing, like what's the number one thing I guess you recommend for people to start, like to get started to try to live a healthier life, brain wise?
Take responsibility for your actions. Like we have to take responsibility for what we do, right? It's not about genes. It's not about your circumstances or anything else. It's about, the actions that you're taking every single day, and just take responsibility for it. So if you want to have a healthier brain, start to take responsibility for it. Start to take responsibility for what you're putting into your body. If you don't know what should you be eating, there's a million resources out there on the internet that are free that you can start to learn.
Social media, yeah. You can start scrolling through the positive stuff.
Or YouTube University.
Exactly. YouTube University.
By the way, we'll put his link down so you can get on his university.
There you go. So you can start there. So start, absorbing all that free information that's there. Start with that. Start learning what you need to do to be healthy. If you don't know where to start, then find an expert. Like myself. If you're looking to try more and learn more about where your brain and how it's functioning. If you're stuck with metabolic problems, go find a good functional nutritionist or functional med practitioner and have them guide you in that process. And it's just, it's going to be a learning journey, but you have to take responsibility for it and move every single day.
Yeah, be active for sure. And where can people find you? What's the easiest way for people to contact you?
Easiest way is to go to our website, wpoptimalliving.com. So again, our practice name is Wild and Precious Optimal Living. We're located in Wheat Ridge, Colorado. So easiest way is the website. You can send us a contact form there. You can find us on Instagram at Wild Precious Optimal Living. We also post stuff on there as well. And again, our YouTube page, that is our most popular right now, Wild and Precious Optimal Living on YouTube. I put up stuff there once a week talking about everything from overcoming anxiety, talking about brain fog. We're always pushing stuff out.
Yeah. So guys, if you guys need something in that space, I believe everybody should. Like Dr. Sam here, he told it. He broke down pretty much all this, so he's well educated and the whole brain function. What it does to your body, positive and negative effects. Mm-hmm. So, what do you think, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, like the thing you said about responsibility. I mean, I feel like the biggest thing, because that's like an ongoing theme here we have on the podcast, is just taking responsibility for your actions, and then once you do, then you can start taking the steps to improve yourself.
Absolutely.
That's very, very important for that. But yeah, I just wanted to thank you again for driving out here and coming on here and sharing a little bit about like what you have to about like different diseases, what people can be doing to prevent them and all that stuff.
And just to educate the people more, because like we always say too, I think that people lack education. So it's like, I appreciate you coming on here, helping us get some education out there for people.
Absolutely. Well, doctor means teacher, right? So first and foremost, we have to teach.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So with all that being said, thank you again, and just remember that an act of rebellion is to question.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you later.
Yeah. Underrated. We the underdogs, underestimated. Underrated.